Quake greetings. Welcome to another video. Today we're going to uh, talk about the Pocahontas exception. So let's share our screen. Okay. Um, and you can read what's on the screen right now, and we'll read together. This is from AI Overview. The Pocahontas exception. Uh, Presented by myself, Heru the Copper-Colored God, May 16th, 2026. The Pocahontas exception was a legal loophole in 1920s Virginia that allowed elite white families to claim Native American ancestry without losing their white legal status. Historically, the shift of indigenous Americans into broader racial categories like colored, Negro, and eventually Black occurred through government bureaucracy, assimilation policies, and the restrictive one-drop rule. I didn't realize how much AI said here because I don't believe I framed the question. Oh, I might have used colored, but wait, I did. I'm sorry. I did uh ask AI overview to include the shift. Yes, I did. Pardon. So scratch that. And it did without any of the pushback that I usually get from ChatGPT. So let's read it again, please, ladies and gentlemen. The Pocahontas exception was a legal loophole in 1920s Virginia that allowed elite white families to claim Native American ancestry without losing their white status, legal status. So we're going to read this one more time, this first part. The Pocahontas exception was a legal loophole in 1920s Virginia that allowed elite white families to claim Native American ancestry. That's where I kind of want to pause. Ladies and gentlemen, why would white families who are already elite, why would they want or desire to claim Native American ancestry? And I see we got fooled again because we're not supposed to be using the term Native American, right? Because as we saw in the last video, it really didn't come about uh, legally till about I would say from 1965 to 1970, because I found some kind of law. ChatGPT was playing with me and pulled up a law from 1965. I don't know if we'll get to look at that. Excuse me. Excuse me. Uh, but so in the 1920s, there was no such thing as Native American. So, this is the sort of retroactive thing that the system does. It takes a term that was not used back in the early 1900s, like Native American, but it will update the system to pretend that Native American was used as a term as far back as however back they want to go. They would take it back to the Ice Age. And we know for darn sure this did not go back to the Ice Age. It's a what? 20th century invention. That's very new, ladies and gentlemen. The term Native American, as we talked about in the last video, let's just do a quick little highlight there. This term is so new that it kind of knocks your socks off to think that it would ever be associated with American Indian. But let's go back to the question at hand. We're going to read this one more time, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry. Um I like to be a little bit repetitive, partly because I've noticed that my recording apparatus is shall we say wanting. And so it will cut my voice out uh you know just throughout a video randomly. And so luckily, I think the ancestors have made most of my videos still, you know, able to be comprehended. And it was partly because I would repeat some things. There were some times when I didn't, and I should have, but for the most part, uh, the words get caught, even though um, my recording equipment was basically my headphones and my laptop. I don't know, it just goes in and out. So I like to repeat what I say, if you will bear with me. The Pocahontas exception was a legal loophole in 1920s Virginia that allowed elite white families to claim Native American ancestry without losing their white legal status. Um, these people they were basically, I would say these were the very first uh category of $5 Indians, but they didn't have to pay $5. This is the Algonquin version of the $5 Indians. The other $5 Indians would be more of the five civilized tribes. Uh, you know, with the Dawes Act. This is way before. Wait, wait, wait. Is this before the Dawes Act? Oh, no, it's not. Pardon. I believe the Dawes Act was 1877. Um, but regardless, again, why would already white appearing families want to claim Native American ancestry? Now, we got to add this to, like, we want to solidify that yes, these people looked Caucasian. Why? because color was the only other category. You were either white or colored. And colored had you looking like a Negro with one drop. This they call it one drop, but we deduce that when they say one drop, they cannot literally mean blood quantum or you know a blood measurement. What they're talking about is a people that look physically like Negro people. You see? So we want to try to realize why a white family that has a white legal status, like we just read, right? What are they gaining by being associated with American Indians, what they're calling here Native American? We're going to go out on a limb, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to say being have a white person being able to claim Native American can only mean one thing: land ownership. It means that they are able to have what belongs to quote unquote colored American Indians. You see, that could be there's no other reason why a white person would want to claim Native American. What for? First of all of our culture is being dismantled. Our traditions are being dismantled. So a white person claiming American Indian, what are they claiming? Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we have to look with our ancestral eyes to know that the way this is worded, it belies the grab. It's not telling you what there is to gain by these white people being being able to claim American Indian ancestry. Now, I will say that the general idea is that these were children of Pocahontas and John Rolfe. So let's suppose Pocahontas had children before she got married to John Rolfe. And let's suppose she had children with another American Indian, had children with John Rolfe. The children she had with the American Indian, they're going to be labeled colored. The children she later has with John Rolfe, they're going to be called white because of John Rolfe being an English, excuse me, an Englishman. So John Rolfe's kids are going to have the birthright that Pocahontas's colored kids will not be able to have. We want to be really clear about this, ladies and gentlemen. You have a foreign influx And they are determined to take the land, not to share it. They are taking land and land rights away from so-called colored American Indians. I want you to go deep down as a true first contact. Put your first contact uh, attire on as an American Indian. And I want to invite the civilized tribes or the civilized Indian to dare to stand up for your kinsmen, if we in fact are your kinsmen, and see the injustice and to deny the injustice. That's a challenge because Moors don't share, you know? And what you're finding scattered among civilized tribes are Moors. They're the ones that would require you being civilized. Yeah, they're your brother, yada, yada, yada. But if you're not of the same religion, there's a problem, ladies and gentlemen. I'm reading random literature, here and there, little blurbs that claim that the Moors were religious, they were religiously tolerant. But you must understand the more, the more he's going to tolerate you. But in that is sort of I want to say, a hidden agenda that at best you do convert and change your name and change your whole bloodline by changing your name to his monotheistic religion. After all, you are a heathen to him. And, many Muslims are famous for calling out those who are infidels. Now, the Negro Moor, he's going to finesse it a little bit because why? He knows, he knows the Negro Moor knows the land and resources that American Indians are working with. You see? So he's going to bite his tongue for a little bit because he needs to establish a, a, a rapport with American Indians. He has to tread differently with an American Indian because an American Indian is his equal physically, core spiritually. In other words, same spirituality, though it leans toward two different types of religions, but a very similar spiritual makeup of more shares with an American Indian. But really, ladies and gentlemen, it's the more. And I really want Moors to hear this. We're not just attacking you. We want you to see, to understand, because I don't average Moor really sees what someone like myself sees. I think the Moors literally kind of do wear a sort of rose-tinted type of glasses because of the indoctrination. The Abrahamic religion, it has an indoctrination with it, and it really does not, it really has no room for any other religious narrative. Unfortunately, that's the nature of monotheism. Moors are monotheistic. American Indians are not. I guess the best picture we could have of something like that. Let's look at, say, the marriage of a Janet Jackson to, I don't know her son's father's name, but I do know he was Muslim. And we all know that, right? We could even look at, well, although it's not a Muslim situation, Megan Good and her marriage, trying to be married to this, Bible thumping, uh, completely conditioned, uh, you know, I don't know what to call, just the whole Christian zealot kind of thing going on, these type of religions where an American Indian female has to adopt all of this, change of everything and conform. Same thing with males. I mean, I'm just talking about how, if you could look at it like a marriage trying to happen, with these serious differences. I want American Indians to see that as lightly as we might take religion. It's a serious thing when you are seen as a heathen to someone who practices monotheism. Now they again they'll bite their tongue, to bear with you, but truthfully, there is no room for you in a spiritual system that condemns condemns those who do not, quote unquote, believe that there is only one God and only through that God's Son. See, there's only one God, but it's not him you have to go to, it's his son. It gets very, it's a slippery slope, ladies and gentlemen, when you're trying to make a Trinity over into a one God religion. Now, I like to say it this way. My father is my father. God rest his soul. I am his son, but we are not one person. I am my own person, and my father is his own person. We share his DNA, obviously, which is also shared with my mother, obviously. So in real life, when you go to use uh, a when you try to model spirituality after real life occurrences or situations, you've got to stick to that. You can't have it both ways. You really can't, because things won't things won't gel properly. Hence the problem of trying to say that a father and a son are one thing, you know? So I guess I'm just trying to show that monotheism can't even really be monotheism. In other words, spirituality is so inherently polytheistic that monotheism really is not, it's not going to work. It has problems. Let's say it that way. It has serious problems when someone tries to apply just the even an analogical analogy, I'm trying to say, uh common sense to it. It won't even fit in the analogy because fathers and sons are never one thing. See? Uh let's see if we can hash this out a little bit. I know we're going off topic, ladies and gentlemen. But we gotta hit this. We gotta hit this. Or should I not hit this? Because I kind of want to. I guess the question in my head is why couldn't why couldn't why couldn't this deity just be himself and not be a son, just be himself? Just say, I'm choosing to be born, I'm staying myself. I'm going to choose someone to be my mother, but I'm still, I'm not a son. It's me, just being born. How does, how does Jesus become the Son of God and God? And, it's a rhetorical question. I know a Christian will jump at the opportunity to explain, but really, there is no explaining. There is no explaining. I think if I were to try, I would say that they had to build it on the Osirian, the Osirian Trinity of Isis, Osar, and Heru. Actually, I should call her a Set or Set. Uh, Osar and Heru. I think the only reason why they had to create this trinity that's unnecessary is because they were building it on something that pre-existed and they needed the people to be able to relate to that which pre-existed, which was a trinity consisting of three separate individuals. Once again, even in the original trinity, they are separate. So I think that's the one, if there was some kind of rationale for monotheism having the need, the necessity to try to make three individuals into one by turning the mother into the Holy Spirit. That's another thing. And then somehow making the father his own son, like making the father disappear and return as his own son. It just why? And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, because of the original Trinity. You see what I'm saying? They drew this story from the original Trinity, which it was three separate individuals. But because they're making quote unquote monotheism, they had to make them one. So let's move on. Pocahontas is like, I thought y'all was talking about me today. Sorry, sis. We are. My Algonquin sister. First contact. Okay, so since we went all across the street with it, as my brother says, that's a phrase my brother made up. I just fell in love with it. Why can't I make this highlight go away? Thank you. So let's read this one more time and then we're going to move on. I know we've been blabbing and I do apologize. The Pocahontas exception was a legal loophole in 1920s Virginia that allowed elite white families to have need to claim that who needed to claim native ancestry to steal land and still keep their whiteness. You see, we don't have that kind of versatility, ladies and gentlemen. We come out looking colored and we don't get to flow from one legal status to another. We're in a caste. That's called caste. Isabel Wilkerson wrote the book on caste. If you think caste is a fake thing or something that doesn't exist in the Americas, check out the film Origins. That's also the story of Isabel Wilkerson, the author. We spoke of her early on in our videos, but she brought to light the hidden in plain sight caste system that we're in. Now, in that caste system, again, the white status has a little more mobility than the colored or black status. And why did we end up being colored? I think it has something to do with being called copper colored. But that was in the 1828 dictionary. So apparently we were called colored earlier. Somebody called us copper colored. And yeah, that would be interesting to figure out. Well, I think we do touch upon it in one of the videos. 'Cause I thought we did a timeline of, or is that what I'm hoping to do tonight? Actually, I think that's what I was hoping to do tonight. I think we touched on it, but I do have a slide here. I think of the timeline of, did we do that already though? Well, we'll see. We'll see. So, I believe the term colored is derived from we being described as copper colored. Okay. So historically, the shift of indigenous Americans into broader racial categories like colored, Negro, and eventually Black occurred through government bureaucracy. So, ladies and gentlemen, when we think of racism, the first thing we think about, I think, is just the general population of Caucasian people. Somehow, I think we have a blind eye when it comes to the government being the main culprit. How so? Well, we said this once before. Even if it were the general population of Caucasian people that were committing quote unquote racist acts against quote unquote colored American Indians, if the government was working correctly, those white people would be dealt with. So it's not a general population carte blanche white race of people. However, they are being given a sort of pass by the government's bureaucracy to act out in racist ways. In other words, the government actually encourages race, what we call racism. Really, it's just another form of genocide of a people because it's directed at the first people of the land that is being colonized. Now, we are peaceful American Indians. We like to say we don't advocate violence against any public official representing the United States. A lot of them are completely oblivious to again, ladies and gentlemen, when you have a corporate model, very, very often, it is only those at the top. It just like with the secret societies, it is really only those at the top that know the agenda. While those, I would say Marjorie Taylor Greene, we mentioned her in an earlier video. Marjorie Taylor Greene, she is a perfect example of someone who didn't realize the top-downness of the government. She, like so many delusional, Moorish influenced American Indians, really believed in the current president. She really had, I want to say, high hopes for his success in being committed to what he promoted, which was at one point like draining the swamp. And I believe Marjorie Taylor Greene even mentioned that, I think, in one of her interviews. But I bring her up to say she's a perfect example of someone in a system who is not aware of the top level agenda. She got a wake up call to the tune of she had to resign. Now, I think she's trying to figure out how she can be of assistance in some way, in some kind of leadership government type of way. So she's been doing a lot of interviews. If you watch Kim Iverson is something, yo. She's one of these that she was like a godsend throughout the whole COVID psyop because she was very, I recall, very skeptical of the status quo, the acceptable narrative. And I found that she really, it was very grounding to watch Kim Iverson uh during and namely a little after the onset of COVID. She was so sobering. It was so good to see someone who you could tell was not trying to be controlled in what she said. So anyway, Kim Iverson did a interview with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she practically begged her. Kim Iverson was shameless in begging Marjorie Taylor Greene, please, we could use people like you. Blah, blah, blah. And Marjorie was being a little bit hesitant. She said, what did she say? She said, for me to come back into politics, people will have to be a lot more. I believe that was her exact words from what off the top of my head. And I have to say, I understand what she means. I kind of feel that way in the American Indian movement now. I feel like so many of us still trust in a system that would have a bureaucracy like the one we're reading about. And it's like we, I think we're conditioned to think that, oh, there has to be a solution because this is the only government we could ever have, and it's the only one that exists, and it's America. It's the greatest country on earth, and it's like, no, stop drinking the Kool-Aid. That's never what it was. It's never what it was. You didn't invite this government here. I just the words of Malcolm X lately, they really, you know what I'm about to say, they really strike a chord with me when he says Plymouth Rock landed on you. I feel that. I feel like we've forgotten that it wasn't a rock that we asked for. It wasn't a rock that we invited. It just literally showed up. It just literally showed up and it planted itself here. It didn't want to deal with Pocahontas's people. It just wanted to knock her up and get some babies so that they could have the white status and also be American Indian. And why we decided we know with our ancestral eyes, why did these people need anything from these heathen? We were heathen. Why would you want anything from us? Well, because that land was mighty, mighty good. Your land was mighty, mighty good. Now, your God is a demon, but he sure give your good land, unlike our God that have us here stealing yours. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we want to read the second part and let that hit home. Historically, the shift of indigenous Americans into broader racial categories like colored Negro. Wait a minute, did you say indigenous Americans were called colored Negro and eventually black? How come the world doesn't seem to understand that simple breakdown, that simple historical fact? It's like the United States really is working some kind of or trying to work a psyop. It seems like it's kind of working, but I think the whole thing is really starting to come apart at the seams. But the United States still does not. It acts like it puts its fingers in its ears and sings ting-a-ling-a-loo. La 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 la. You're black from Africa. La 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 la. I mean, literally, that's what Congress must be doing, right? When you show them the Constitution, not that we should be going by the Constitution in a peaceful test and a stand for our birthright over citizenship. We don't need a citizenship. We're the only people in America who don't require a citizenship. And we really need to be darn happy about that. Because what we have experienced for the last over 200 years, when you include South America and the Caribbean, is nothing short of absolutely horrific. It's amazing that like we said, it's a bold move for any British nobility to even come here at a time like this. But that's how brazen they are. Uh, But again, I think they're trying to save their house. But their house should be in the quote unquote United Kingdom where it belongs, right? Why are you coming to my land? And you don't even respect me. You come here and you don't even respect the people here. You just want the land and you're gonna take care of the people. And when we say take care of, we don't mean actually take care of them, right? You're just gonna make them non-entities, dead, perpetual slaves, per dumb diverses, one of the papal bulls that comprise the doctrine of discovery. Okay, so this occurred, this misclassification that left us landless and having no control over the land's resources while someone else profits. This occurred through government bureaucracy, not random white people every day that you see walking down the street. But we're talking about Congress, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about the Supreme Court, ladies and gentlemen. In a peaceful civil manner, so-called civil. So this occurred through government bureaucracy. That's what AI is saying. I'm not even saying it. I'm just reading it for emphasis. Assimilation, and you get assimilated. But how do you get assimilated, ladies and gentlemen? Are you treated like everybody else that you're assimilating into? No, you're their perpetual slave class. I mean, what is there for us? They're getting the best of everything, right? They got the best of who we are by taking our birthright, and then they also getting the white status. What are we getting? What do they call it? The prison pipeline? That what we get? Will we really get to be slaves? I mean, are there any American Indians out there who realize that there is no winning? And we have been trying to win for the last over 200 years, but where somehow something happens and we don't win. When the way we're seen, no matter how impressive we are, you could have your, I don't even want to name her, but Oprah Winfrey's, right? I don't even want to talk about that situation, y'all. Ugh. But you have those type of individuals that rise to like international fame and fortune, but somehow it doesn't affect how we are seen, how we are treated, how we are perceived. Still no land ownership, no true land ownership. That would mean we wouldn't have to go through the government to deal with our land, ladies and gentlemen, because it's ours. If we felt like selling, although Indians don't sell land, but if we wanted to, that would be, our within our power. But we would never do that, ladies and gentlemen. After having it stolen from us, I think we can safely say we will never be selling our land because we never did. It was stolen. Now, rent is something, lease is something, And that will always be an ongoing. That's what we lost, ladies and gentlemen. We don't have an ongoing uh profit like those who stole our land does. I mean, every time somebody buys a property, you know, ultimately, who's the land belong to, ladies and gentlemen? That's a good question, right? Where do they go to buy land, ladies and gentlemen? Like, say you just, um, you know, Johnny, uh, can't even think of a word. Johnny, you're someone who's green, okay? The term green to me that you just don't know how things work. You're kind of green to the situation. How does average Joe with a who does the land belong to right now? Right? It doesn't belong to American Indians, right? No. Who gets a cut? Who 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 does the land belong to right now, Liz? That's a good question, right? Because the way I see it, it belongs to the government, ultimately. First of all, we have what they call a national or public debt. So that automatically sort of leaves the people in a state of owing the government. So what does the government do? Well, I'll just take the land. You can still live here but you owe me. But really, the land is mine because you owe me so much. But remember, we as American Indians, we don't owe this corporation or even the people who own the corporation or the shareholders and all that. We don't owe them diddly squat, as we always say, right? I don't know who owes them, ladies and gentlemen, because really, I mean, it would be a conversation for citizens, but the way I see it, if you hire someone and they're in some kind of finance, look, we're not talking about American Indians. We didn't hire them, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, let's be clear. They came and they took because of the doctrine of discovery that says if you come upon a heathen land, you can make the people your perpetual slaves and take their land and do as you will. Something to that effect, right? But it's a conversation uh for those who are said to be shall we say state citizens. Excuse me. Oh, that was a second yawn, huh? But it is Friday. Now, what were we saying before we got whatever? We were trying to figure out who owns the land, and we were talking about um, how this public debt plays a role in no one owning land, really, right? But I forgot where we were going with that. We don't owe the government anything. Oh, I know what we're going to say. We're going to say if the citizens allegedly hired the federal government to do like 18 or 19 enumerated functions. And they budget, say now the citizens budgeted for 19 enumerated functions that could be carried out with Congress meeting at least once a year somehow, right? So if you hired someone to do 19 different things, but they had to meet a minimum of once a year. And the next thing you know, they have over 300 enumerated functions. Those enumerated functions cost. You got to pay them. Still be ladies and gentlemen. I'm like, yo, I'm up a storm now. Jeez. Um, so there you have your public debt being skyrocketed, but it's not the citizens that's skyrocketing the public debt. You see what I'm saying? So even they have an argument against that public debt. I mean, we American Indians, our argument is, can y'all go home now? All of y'all? See, but that, we still working on it, right? But I have to say, the citizens, I think okay, we know that they're here without our invitation. I'm just saying that they do have a legitimate gripe with a system that allegedly they gave 19 enumerated functions to. And I mean, ugh. Well, um, that's a whole other jurisdiction. I don't even want to talk about it, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's all everything done when it's a colonizer situation. I think it's purposely kept broken, is the best way to say it. It's a system that it has to have a degree of brokenness because it's never an ethical thing. It's never a lawful thing. It's never a legal thing. To create a system on top of grand theft, you see, we have to move on because we are just a preaching. Oh my God. Okay. So let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. Finally, right? I'm so sorry. Pocahontas rolling over in her grave. Sorry, sis. I'm so sorry. But we did give you the pretty colors today. That's for you. That's for you, sis. Okay. So, not to mention the thumbnail we might use for Pocahontas. Oh my gosh. Y'all gonna say who that is. That's the magic of Heru. Yeah, I'm eyeballing a thumbnail that is especially created for this video. Never been seen before rendition of Miss Pocahontas. Now we know that wasn't her name, but that's the name everybody knows her by. So we're gonna use it. Okay. And I knew her name, and now I can't recall. I know it begins with an M, but I'm not recalling it at the moment. So let's read the Pocahontas Exception explained. I'm so sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but I know I'm long-winded. Please bear with me. Uh, okay, we're gonna do a little by little. In 1924, the Commonwealth of Virginia passed the Racial Integrity Act, an aggressive eugenics law designed to prevent mongrelization of the white race. Everything is seen in terms of what it's doing with the white race. They don't want to talk about what they doing to the color folk, right? This is just, I'm sorry, ladies. It's really hard to read this when you actually go to read it and you see what they're doing. Ugh. So the Racial Integrity Act was an aggressive eugenics law designed to prevent the mongrelization. of the white race. Y'all could have stayed home if you didn't want to be quote unquote mongrelized. And we're not mongrels. We're Negroes over here. You talking about Mongolia, but you're lying again because there ain't no Native Americans present in 1924. The act strictly enforced the one drop rule. And as we said before, ladies and gentlemen, did they have a blood monitor to figure out who had Negro one drop of Negro blood? Or were they looking at how you looked? You see what I'm saying? Legally classifying anyone with any ascertainable amount of, there we go with African. Oh boy. See, even when they're explaining it to you and they just said indigenous people were colored, Negro, and black, they throw in the African. There was no care or concern for African blood, ladies and gentlemen. The blood that they are making a big fuss over and need so that they can say that somehow, say that this is part of their birthright now. This is American blood. It's not African. The act strictly enforced the one drop rule, legally classifying anyone with any ascertainable amount of American blood as colored. Ascertainable. What did it do? Taste your blood? We know you like to drink blood. This people that practice certain religions, right? However, many of Virginia's elite and politically powerful families, the so-called first families of Virginia, the only first families would have been the original ones, ladies and gentlemen, not these post colonizer families. You know, I want to say for a minute there, you read this, and it almost seems like they're trying to say the Algonquins were sort of on board with this. We were not. We were not. Um, so it's not that Algonquins were trying to be special by mixing with these English. I mean, for crying out loud, they had to what kidnap this Pocahontas. Does that sound like it was let's all shake hands and be friends? No. They kidnapped Pocahontas. And it is alleged that they killed her. Once they had the babies, they didn't need her. That means she was not really down with it at all either. Pocahontas, from what I understand, she wanted there to be like harmony and peace between English and American Indians. But little did she know, it's just not possible when someone is stealing from you. They don't want to get along. They want to pretend to get along. They like that. It feels better when they feel like they're getting over. So Pocahontas, I don't think a great deal of us back then realized how important our land was to these thieves. They really needed it to live because apparently their God just was not providing. And I really think this was about the survival of the English throne. I have to say, I don't. I just don't know that they would be so quote unquote great without America. And the thing is, this was done with, we had no choice in the matter. They just saw the land and that was it, y'all. It's like, how can we get rid of these folks without them even knowing? We can become, ladies and gentlemen, when greed is the driving factor. This is all about greed and dying desire to quote unquote rule the world. That's the other thing. These kings, their heads become so damn big that what belongs to them is not enough. They have to have what belongs to them. That's what I'm seeing, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry. That's what I'm seeing. I don't see that a king in this kind of situation gives a damn about anything but uh just complete domination of the world's resources and really feeling as if they're controlling the people through this manipulation. To feel like this is what God promised them, or somehow this is them partaking in being God. But why does it seem so satanic what you're doing? I mean, we're hearing about children being tortured and murdered. Would quote unquote, what would God do? That well, they would say to me, well, it depends on what God you serve. Now, if you serve the God we serve, homie is having a ball, okay? And we ain't even begun. We've only just begun. So yeah. Okay, so we read so-called first families of Virginia prided themselves on their descent from the 1614 marriage of Pocahontas and English colonist John Rolfe. So they were proud of that shit. How could you be proud of a people and yet basically make them bottom feeders? What are you proud of? Because they wanted our land. So we had to be, ladies and gentlemen, when I say that there is no Jesus, but there is an American Indian, you got to peep game, y'all. You got to peep game. Jesus was not providing for these folks, y'all. Come on, somebody got to talk about it. Jesus was not providing. But who's providing for these folks? The very same man and woman that they are damning to hell. Yeah? See? So who's the sacrifice for this theft fest? Who's being sacrificed for real, like for real, like, it's the American Indian. You got major monarchies of Europe. They can't sit their fast ass down. They so quick to get over here. So they can become, I can't even say great again because I just don't know that they were great until, oh my gosh, America made these folks great, y'all. But what did it do to the American Indians, though? What happened to us, y'all? Forever fighting for fleeting, quote unquote, civil rights. Remember, civil rights are unalienable, but we're not even supposed to be under the jurisdiction of the United States at all. So these folks are willing to walk with pride, their chest puffed out before the world, while literally we're like dragging on the ground in a pool of blood behind them, part of their royal train for their royal what do you call that thing? The cloak thing. They walk around like proud as a peacock. Meanwhile, we dragging behind them because they need our basically sacrifice to make themselves what they want to appear to be before the world. Could they do this without us? Apparently not. American Indians? Apparently not. Africa is not colonized like we are. It's like the Goldilocks effect. They still here. Oh my goodness, somebody been sleeping in my house and they ain't leave. And even when I found them, they don't want to leave. Now Africa, when they walk in there, I say, "Oh, someone was here, but now they gone." Apparently, they didn't like our house because they were from the north of Africa. Um, so these contrary ass colonists basically is we read this and it seem like the colonists were worse than the monarchy. Because I do believe the monarchy was mixed in with the colonists. That's my gut sense is that this is what is going on here. So these contrary folk who said we were heathen, but pride themselves on being descended from a heathen woman like Pocahontas. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. So they prided themselves on their descent from the 1614 marriage of Pocahontas and English colonist John Rolfe. Since these prominent families were visibly of mixed heritage, huh? I really don't think so. I don't think so. The strict one drop rule threatened to legally classify them as colored, stripping them of their social status, segregated privileges, and right to marry whites. Not like the boule, ladies and gentlemen. I'm thinking, we name him sporadically. Somebody like Du Bois, W.E.B. Du Bois, who kind of looks, Caucasian, you know. Um, all I know is when I did look this up, I saw some straight up white looking people uh claim the Pocahontas descend to be descendants of Pocahontas. Okay. So, but they're saying some of them look mixed. Interesting. So it's like you got again this dual thing where you're dirty, nasty, blah blah blah, but we want to be mixed with you. You're heathen, funky, slaves, blah blah blah, but we still want your blood. Guys can't help it, right? But this is a very strategic vampirism, ladies and gentlemen, because really, with the blood of American Indians, once again, you're getting access to their birthright. But the thing is, now you got to kill the firstborn, the first people to get that birthright. Colonization in religion is nasty work, ladies and gentlemen. There's real entities that are being served. That's why they want to get us to worship them as well. So when we do, that's a death sentence to us, ladies and gentlemen. Whether it's Islamism, Islamism, or Christianism, they're all a genocide of our people and our culture and our traditions and our religion, and a win-win for colonizer. Just having you believe his religion is like half the battle. Yeah. So they wanted to continue to marry whites because they got that one drop, but they want to, now they got it and they can say it, but they want to marry white and still claim that blood. So eventually, again, they might start out looking mixed, but I'm sure that they become purity white, yo. They just need to say that they have that little bit of blood, even if after it's bred out, they still gonna, say that they have, the blood, of American Indians who would end up being called colored, Negro, black, and now African American. To protect these families, the Virginia legislature added the Pocahontas Exception, also known as the Pocahontas Clause. This provision stated that an individual could still be legally classified as a white person if they had no non-Caucasian blood other than or less of American Indian ancestry. That sounds like googly gog. Let's try this again. Vision stated that an individual could still be legally classified as a white person if they had no what? No non-Caucasian blood other than or less of American Indian ancestry. Okay. It's just saying that, they can still be white if they have a little bit of American Indian blood. Okay. And then, but the American Indians are not going to be called American. While they claiming to be, uh, descendants of Pocahontas, they are genociding Pocahontas's family. You see, it's dirty, nasty work, ladies and gentlemen. It's so selfish. And trust me, the Moors are the same way. They are not your friends. They come with an agenda. They do not come to heed your wishes. They come to bring you theirs. That's the problem with them. Um, the double standard, while it protected elite white Virginians who wanted to claim romanticized Native ancestry, the Bureau of Vital Statistics under Registrar Walter Plecker actively used the Strict Racial Integrity Act. So it protected the white Virginians, but they were strict when it came to colors, is what I'm reading here. Uh, okay, oh, that's the rest of the sentence. Well, why'd you put it down there, though? Let's read it again. The double standard. While it protected elite white Virginians who wanted to claim romanticized American Indian ancestry, the Bureau of Vital Statistics under Registrar Walter Plecker actively used the Strict Racial Integrity Act to legally erase contemporary working class American Indians. There were no Native Americans at this time. Plecker frequently reclassified indigenous populations such as the Monacan, the Pamunkey tribes as Negro or colored, forcing them into segregated schools and denying them their tribal identities on birth and death certificates. Nasty work, ladies and gentlemen. Timeline of racial classifications, indigenous uh, to African American. Okay, so the racial classification, uh, I guess I would have to say indigenous to American Indians. Mm. Okay. The shift of American Indian individuals and their Afro-Indigenous descendants. Oh, so that's some bullshit. Because they act like we came from Native Americans again. Uh-oh. The shift of Native American individuals and their Afro-Indigenous descendants into the such bullshit into the categories of colored, Negro, Black, and African American was a fluid, often involuntary process of government classification spanning over 2 centuries. India, okay, colonial era to 1800. So, like the 1600s to the 1800s. In early America, American Indians were recognized as distinct political nations and separate peoples. In early census records, those of mixed Native and African heritage were occasionally documented as Black Indian or Muskie, but indigenous identity was generally preserved. Some bullshit. To the 1890s. As federal and state governments began strictly categorizing citizens, the category Indian was formalized in the U.S. Census. However, many indigenous people who lived in mixed communities or off reservation simply fell into the free colored category to survive Jim Crow era restriction. Free colored are Negropeans, ladies and gentlemen, because Indians are called Indians in the Constitution. And there's free persons in the Constitution, but there's not free colored persons. They're just free persons. But you can see that this is a standing of foreigners. But they're trying to make Indians foreigners. So they, again, this is where the Moors become American Indians and their dreams come true. Because now we all going to be called as if we're Moors. They're going to call us free persons of color, but that's a Moor, not an American Indian. We didn't have to break ourselves free from a king. Native Americans did. I'm sorry. Uh, the colonists did, I should say. The free colored persons, I should say. Okay, so Indian was colonial era to 1800s and then 1850s. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, the 1850s. Oh, well, I know Indian was used as far back as 1492, so that's why I'm a little confused. As federal and state governments began strictly categorizing citizens, the category Indian was formalized in the U.S. Census. However, many indigenous people who lived in mixed communities or off reservation simply fell into the free colored category to survive Jim Crow era restrictions. The Jim Crow era, did they ever ask the people if they were free persons of color before they terrorized them? I don't think so. The next is colored. Colored was post-Civil War to the 1920s. The Civil War, I forget the date. Okay, colored. Post-Civil War to 1920s. Following the Civil War, the term colored was widely adopted in the South due to the displacement of tribal lands, the erasure of indigenous histories, and anti-miscegenation, interracial marriage laws. Many mixed Native Americans were forced to identify or add, or I'm sorry, identify as or were administratively recorded as colored. This classification placed them legally alongside African American. Okay. Now return. We are back, and thank you for your patience. Okay, so we have one, number one, Indian in the colonial era to the 1800s. And up to the 1890s, from the colonial era to the 1890s, right? That's Indian, no Native American category, right? They didn't exist. Then from the 1920s, we have colored. And so we want to read that again. Post-Civil War to 1920s, following the Civil War, the term colored was widely adopted in the South. You see, now they're introducing a location, uh, the South, y'all. Due to the displacement of tribal lands, the erasure of indigenous histories, and miscegenation, anti-interracial marriage laws, many mixed race American Indians were forced to identify as or were administratively, sorry, recorded as colored. This is sounding a little, like they're trying to say again, that they try to give the impression that it was blacks mixing with uh quote unquote Native Americans. But no, it's the colored people themselves that have that drop of blood that makes all the difference, right? It's not Native Americans. And again, uh, it was Indians that were misclassified Negro, colored, black. It wasn't African Americans that were misclassified colored, Negro, and black. You see, African American comes after those. So they walk a tightrope here, trying to give the impression of a mixed race. If anything, the mixed people would have been those Pocahontas Exception whites that were mixed, right? It wasn't blacks and Native Americans as this last blurb we read seems to try to mislead us into thinking. Remember, there's no such thing as Native Americans really at this point. Excuse me. Okay. It's during the civil rights where Native American is first spoken about in social and political circles, but not legal. There was no legal category for them because I don't believe they existed, ladies and gentlemen, to be quite frank. If you have uh, colored and white, only two categories, and colored meaning you have Negro blood, I'm hearing that there was no Native Americans here, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I'm seeing. Um, okay, so then that was uh post-Civil War to the 1920s, we're colored. I believe colored lasted a little longer than that though, because it went even into the civil rights movement, I believe. Okay, so oh wait, when they say Negro, sorry, oops, I was wrong. Negro, excuse me. So the early 1900s to 1960s. Oh wait, it's still the 1900s, yeah. During this period, the term Negro, often capitalized, was adopted by Black scholars and leaders such as W.E.B. Du Bois. We were just talking about that, Negro, as a specific term of group pride. So it's leaders coming up with this, right? But these leaders were, I think, as we heard, being funded by who? So it was Negro was a specific term of group pride and sociological distinction. However, this period also coincided with intense eugenics campaigns, such as Walter Plecker's in Virginia, state registrars. I'm sorry, in Virginia, period. State registrars deliberately, oh, we got black coming up next, y'all. I guess we can peek at it. Deliberately changed the historical records of hundreds of families from Indian to Negro. Ooh, ooh, Negro? Thought it was colored, y'all. We jumping to the Negro now. All righty. So, how do you go from Indian to Negro, ladies and gentlemen? Unless you start off Indian. How? You see? You see how there's a psyop interwoven into this conversation? At times they'll say it, and then at other times they're going to make it as if we're talking about Africans. Meanwhile, none of this is dealing with Africans. There were no Africans, just like there were no Native Americans, ladies and gentlemen. The Africans come even later than the Native Americans. My God. Uh, in 1988. Oh, wait a minute now. Wait a minute. One reading says that, wait, ladies and gentlemen, I'm recalling a 1990 arrival of Native American in law. But I do think ChatGPT found one in 1975. So if the first mention of Native American legally was in 1975, it did come a little bit before African American. But they're both coming too late, ladies and gentlemen. You see what I'm saying? They're both coming too late to really exist in the world where, as they say, stuff was going down. Okay? And they're coming too late. They should have been the first. Native American and African American should have been from 1601. what was it, 1619? And Native Americans should have been in 15 Native Americans should have been used in like 1585 when Verrazano came to the Roanoke. He should have said they look Mongolian or Asian, but he said they look Ethiopian. So they looked Ethiopian, ladies and gentlemen, but the key here is that they were here before the arrival of Europeans, which puts them before England, France, Germany, Spain. Well, no, well, Spain did come to South America, but in North America, colonization has taken place in 16, like 16, I think a little before 1607, right? Before the charter for Virginia. So Europeans don't get to North America until like early 1600s. But little envoys, little spies will come in as early as 1580, five in the case of Giovanni Verrazzano. And again, he saw Negroes here because he said they looked Ethiopian, although they were not Ethiopian, they were American. And they looked like Negroes. So Verrazano should have said they look like East Asians. That's what he should have said. He should have said they looked like Asians, not Negroes, ladies and gentlemen. You see? So we're saying that the term Native American, when it refers to a phenotype, it should have been mentioned as early as 1585. And African American should have been mentioned in the laws, but it also should have been mentioned in after 1619. But in 1619, according to this breakdown, we were still being called Indians, I believe. Colonial era to the 1800s, Indians. See right here, right here. You got Indian in the colonial era to the 1800s. That should have been Native American. But remember how we said they will start off talking about Indians and then boom, they will mention Native Americans. This is a very clever uh, word game, ladies and gentlemen. It is very prevalent. And that's when, you know, so what's supposed to happen is eventually they won't be talking about Indians at all, and it'll all be Native Americans. That's how they slowly change words. First, they just keep mixing them. So in your mind, it's doing something mentally to you. Every time you see Indian, your mind is going to think Native American. And this is how a word spell works. It's the appearance of the word, right? And so after a while, you just start thinking that they're one and the same. But the difference in years between the two, didn't we say it's like, oh gosh, was it 70 something years? I forgot the math we did. But we did decide that Native American is like not even 60 years old, whereas Indian is over 200 years old, a term. So why would they constantly want to introduce this new term when it started out much earlier as Indian? They're erasing the past, ladies and gentlemen. The United States is engaging in a crime they call genocide. Which reminds me, I want to see, no, I want to see because the word genocide, I want to see when that shows up in history. Um, this is off camera, ladies and gentlemen. I want to use my phone. Okay. Okay, let's see. Okay. So the word genocide was coined in 1944 by Polish Jewish lawyer Raphael Lemkin. It first entered international law on December 9th, 1948, when the United Nations General Assembly adopted the Convention on the Prevention and Oh, I'm not going to read any more, ladies and gentlemen, but I I get the feeling that the paper genocide of 1924, it may not have been called that at the time. You know what I'm saying? If they're saying that the first time it was used, it was in 1944, they're not equating it with Walter Plecker. They're equating it with, you know, Nazi Germany or whatever, you know? So it might be a case where they are uh sort of backdating the term genocide. Uh Although the word itself was first used in law in 1944, and the paper genocide took place in 1924. But it is interesting to note that this is a word in international law, as if nations, you know, don't recognize when they're genociding. It has to go to international. And we want to be really careful, ladies and gentlemen. We really don't need the international jurisdiction because we were never properly introduced to the international system. We enter as wards under the United States. So we are not part of the United Nations, really, really, as blacks. We are the property of the United States, and the United Nations acts like, I don't know what happened. That's what the United Nations is doing. I'm serious. I'm not even joking. Because if they claim to know anything about genocide and they can't see that calling a people black, Negro, colored, and African American when there's no history that has them officially named African, I mean, that's again, like they said with the Native Americans, that's a political and social notion. It's a political, social idea that we are African, but paperwork and legally, we are not African. So you would think that they would go by paperwork, but they don't. Imagine law not relying on paperwork in the modern age. I'm talking about now, back with oral tradition or whatever, that's different. But in a world like today, we shouldn't be using words that have no legal footing, or words that didn't exist at the time certain laws were calling people other than African. We were called colored. And what is a colored? It's an Indian that's been misclassified. In America, a colored is an Indian who was misclassified. But really, it's an American being misclassified twice. Okay. So we got down to black. Did we get to black yet? Negro. Oh, we did Negro. Okay, so let's read one more time. Number three, uh, Negro. That was used in the early 1900s to the 1960s. During this period, the term Negro, often capitalized, was adopted by Black scholars and leaders such as W.E.B. Du Bois as a specific term of group pride and sociological distinction. However, this period also coincided with intense eugenics campaigns, such as Walter Plecker's in Virginia. For the record, let's just define eugenics, ladies and gentlemen. What is eugenics? Let's see. We going off screen to the phone that we left at home today, and we had a whole day without our cell phone. Oh my goodness. We survived. Okay, so what is eugenics? Just one of those words you say. Uh, what what is eugenics in simple terms? Let's read in simple terms. It's one of those words you say, but maybe we might not have a, working definition. Okay, eugenics is the discredited belief and practice of trying to improve the human race through selective breeding. It was based on the false idea that human traits like intelligence, poverty, and behavior are entirely genetic, and that society should encourage desirable people to reproduce while stopping undesirable people from doing so. Um, it may be discredited, but according to the Epstein episode, uh, this is something that Epstein was practicing. He was, doing selective breeding, and I think he was sort of doing I don't know, the high society version of what Nick Cannon is doing, just having babies, just keep having babies. Uh, but I think we heard some of the alleged reasons for Nick Cannon reproducing so much. Some people believe, allegedly, that it's so that he can have donors when he needs them, and that's another thing I think eugenics is about. But it's alive and well. It's just very well hidden. And it's interesting when they talk about undesirable. So again, why would quote unquote white Europeans want or desire to be in Pocahontas's bloodline because they actually have to have a bloodline somewhere to claim in order to sort of make this in their world, this is official. But the problem is you have an agenda because you're not just getting into a bloodline, you're shutting it down. So you want to be the only, this is so fucking Moorish, y'all. Because this is how I see the Moors. The Moors, they pretend to be the best friend of other people of color, but I feel that they couldn't hate us more, especially American Indians, the heathens. They want to be the superior. And as long as American Indians are here, we have the same, again, phenotype, same, uh, you know, makeup. So the Moors just see us as something that prevents them from dominating completely. As we always say in their book of Yaqub, they speak of bringing 97% of American Negroes to their doom. I guess the 3% will be the ones that they converted to Islam or one of the other monotheistic religions. So, again, ladies and gentlemen, we talked about it, that it even becomes evident in the blood. Type O positive, uh, juxtaposed to type O negative. It's a serious division, ladies and gentlemen, and I think it deserves attention. You have two type O blood types. Type O is said to be the oldest blood on earth, yet they do not get along. It is the perfect out picture of what's going on with American Indians and Moors. It's not that we don't welcome them, else they wouldn't be here, right, ladies and gentlemen? It's just that they cannot welcome us. They can't take us, ladies and gentlemen. Just like O negative cannot receive O positive blood, but O positive blood can receive O negative blood. But unfortunately, there's an enmity between us, ladies and gentlemen, and it's in the blood. With the blood, it's not, in other words, it's not Heru telling you that the Moor is anti you. And as bad as I sound, I'm more pro Moor than a Moor could ever be pro me. My blood can accept a Moor's blood. A Moor's blood cannot accept my blood without attacking it. Or yeah, because we don't attack. O positive can receive O negative and O positive. O negative can only receive O negative. Ladies and gentlemen, this is beyond spirituality. I think what happened was the became so solidified that it it showed up in our blood, in our blood. Now, O negative is said to be from Spain, Basque. That's where the Moors, eh, uh, you know, that's where well, they're from North Africa, right? So I guess this blood is coming from North Africa and ending up in Spain with the Basque. And purify their blood type. O negative, that it's the God blood. It's alien blood because they believe in aliens apparently. I don't know. There's something with aliens going on. But uh, I don't know. It could be somebody writing about O negative saying alien, but that's very typical of the I want to call it what is it? Ostentatiousness of the Moor. I'm grand. I'm so better than. I'm refined. I'm civilized. Yet I'll become as barbaric as any barbarian when it comes to, you know, shedding blood in the name of this bloodthirsty deity. I mean, what religions would, why would you need a sword in your emblem or whatever they call that thing? I mean, it just doesn't seem to speak to warm and fuzzy, loving feeling when you see a big old sword, in your iconography or whatever. Uh, yeah. So yeah, it's something. Something went on with the blood, whether it was intentional or natural. It speaks to a very serious, uh, you know, schism. If you have a blood type that just naturally attacks another blood type, it's not going to bode well for relations, ladies and gentlemen. And I think that's why the Moor has to work very hard to appear that he agrees with you when the truth is he's just waiting for the opportunity to, I think the word would have to be cancel you. Cancel you to make you over into him is the goal here. You have to take on a new name. It's like you could just visualize the blood is so anti you and against you that it has to do things to dress you up before it can accept you. We are not acceptable by Moors just as American Indians. It has a lot to do with uh, them wanting to control the earth, not just America, but the entire earth. So there can be no quote unquote original people anywhere. And that's why I believe Moors really gravitate to the Caucasian or Asian races because the Moor can somehow claim a, a firstborn type of reality. Whereas with other American uh, so-called Negroes, the more he met his match, you see, and he's not interested in duking it out with you. He just wants you gone, you know, off. Gone. He doesn't share, ladies and gentlemen. The point I'm trying to make is we, I think, at some point thought that colonization was going to give us even a fraction of a fair shake, but it never did, never will. It has to take you over completely and void you as a people, make you black, make you wards in need of a guardian. They got to watch you. You cannot roam on your land as you wish. I need to segregate you and set you apart and go by what you look like, not by what your heart. Go by what you look like. This is all part of the Moorish colonizer agenda. Okay, we should know it like the back of our hand by now. Okay, so we read about Negro. Did we go to African American? State registrars deliberately changed the historical records of hundreds of families from Indian to Negro to force them into the oppressive laws designed for Black citizens. AI was not playing when she answered this question, y'all. Whereas ChatGPT is going to try to give you excuses. It's going to minimize what the United States did. It's going to say, well, some believe and not all, not all Indians. It's like every Indian that looks Negro is definitely going to be called Negro and not American Indian. So we go back to Black, late 1960s to 1980s. Now I thought we didn't do Black yet. It was Indian, colored, Negro, and now Black. Okay, let's see. That was the late 1960s to the 1980s, sparked by the Civil Rights Movement and the Black Power, Black Pride movements. The term Black was reclaimed to replace Negro, which was seen as a label imposed by white institutions. During this era, many Afro-Indigenous individuals and communities continued identifying under the Black umbrella, solidifying the pan-ethnic solidarity while retaining isolated family lore of Native heritage. So let's read that one more time. During this era, many Afro-Indigenous individuals and communities continued identifying under the Black umbrella, solidifying a pan-ethnic solidarity while retaining isolated family lore of Native heritage. African American. That was from the 1990s to present. Now, we did say that we saw that blurb on 1990s being the actual legal appearance of Native Americans, finally. Not just social and political, but the 1990s, according to one ChatGPT pull-up, was a legal thing. I'm sorry, I might have just misspoken because I'm starting to sleep. Sorry. I guess it's time of the morning. Uh, we're talking about political, social things versus legal things. Which one is more legit? It would have to be the legal thing because laws are going to come into play. Whereas political and social terms like Native American prior to 1990 are just to divert people away from, you know, the truth of the matter. Okay. So African American is number five. That was from the 1990s to present. It was popularized by leaders like Jesse Jackson in the late 1980s. African American gained a widespread adoption to emphasize cultural roots, historical resilience, and connection to the African diaspora. I am not connected to the African diaspora. Much like other hyphenated American identities. Today's self-identification allows for multifaceted heritages, and many Americans claim descent from multiple groups, including distinct modern African American and Native American identities. Okay, so that's just a list of uh, footnotes. It looks like a lot of them are Wikipedia, ladies and gentlemen. Um, I can put them in the comment section at some point if people would be interested in seeing. But ladies and gentlemen, this is part one, ladies and gentlemen. We really need to call it a day for this video. I did have the Chat GPT uh, version to this topic. and I thought I would go over it, but I don't think I am. It was another item I was thinking of peeking at. Let's take a Yeah, we didn't do this either. This is the comparative timeline of terms Indian colored, Native American, and African American in government technology. This is only 2 pages, but I did do a video on this, but I didn't post it. Um, we might have to do this in the next video, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a little bit too fatigued right now, kind of been up all night. So it's just an extension of what we've been talking about, the timeline, when the words first appeared, And so we could first level, Indian is the very first, right? Now those colored 1790 to 1850. Native American 1900 limited to and then 1968 to 1977. Latest like 1835 to 1988. We're not gonna do the whole video. It's just 2 pages, but I don't think I will be any good to you if I try to read them now. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, we were looking at AI's explanation of the Pocahontas exception. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hate to uh, have to shut it down for now when I thought of other things to show, but uh, it can be our next video. Till then, thank you so much for watching. Uh, please feel free to comment, like, and subscribe. Especially like and share if you're so inclined. Till then, be and stay happy, worthy American so-called Indians. Till next time. Thank you again.